A senior Ukrainian official has said that the country's hopes are fulfilling the #1 task in their counteroffensive against Russian forces and have had a particularly fruitful last few days. Security and defence analyst Professor Michael Clarke joins me now to take a closer look at the situation on the ground. Michael, what are we expecting may unfold over the next few days?
Yes, Jane, we're seeing a couple of things. From the Ukrainian side, they've been trying to stretch the Russians, look for gaps and actually break up their shape. And there's some evidence that they're beginning to do that. They might have done it in a few places. And there's three areas of the map, if you look at the whole front, which are of interest. One is around Bakmut. The Ukrainians north and south of Bakmut, particularly to the south, on the high ground to the south, are making some real progress there. There's a lot of fighting going on. The Russians look as if they're bringing some reserves into that area to try to stem that particular offensive. Probably the most important one is the centre. To Velika Novosilka through to Orikhiv. This is really important because the Ukrainians are going for Tokmak, undoubtedly. If they get Tokmak, then that's the way to Melitopol on the coast. Very tough. They haven't come across the main defensive lines yet. The Sorovikin line, as it's called, by General Sorovikin. He has disappeared, of course, in Moscow, but his defences are still there, and the Ukrainians have still got to meet those defences. That's a really critical one. But the Ukrainians have also opened up a third front by crossing the Dnipro River at Kherson and also at Novokhovka, and the Russians are now trying to counterattack that. So the Ukrainians are stretching the Russians further west than they probably expected to be stretched, and a lot of the ground that was flooded by the blowing of the Novokhovka Dam is now drying out in the hot summer. So those three fronts are where the Ukrainians seem to be pushing and concentrating. However, the enemy always gets a vote. And there are a lot of reports that the Russians are concentrating around Kreminna. Now, they nearly lost Kreminna some time ago. The Kreminna Svatove, which is just off the map there, the P-66 road between them, and then Kupiansk further west. The Russians held on to Kreminna against expectations, to be honest, and it now looks as if they're building up a lot of troops there. Some say it's up to 120,000. That might be, I think, an overestimate, but nevertheless, tens of thousands of Russian troops. We don't know the quality of them. We don't know how much equipment they've got or whether it's any good, but the fact is they're building up troops there. Now, possibly that is to try to relieve Bakmut, but also, almost certainly, to conduct their own offensive to get back some of the area that they lost in Kharkiv province last summer. So while the Ukrainians are pushing on these areas, it looks as if the Russians are actually going to open up their own counteroffensive to give the Ukrainians something else to worry about. And the Ukrainians still haven't yet brought their big 9 forward, the 9 armoured brigades that they've had ready for this offensive at some point. Maybe the big 9 is about to be on the move, maybe, because the Ukrainians have now blocked all communication. They've gone into media blackout in Kiev, and that usually is a sign that something is happening.